First of all, Mr. Vice President, thank you for doing this. I know this is an unusual campaign, and I want to talk about that in a minute, but you've been rolling out some of your priorities, and you're calling it Build Back Better. And you've already talked about manufacturing. I talked with Chairman Perez about that last week. I know today you're talking about building a workforce for child care and early childhood education. Tell me how that might work and what it would mean for a place like Michigan.
Well, what it means for a place like Michigan, an awful lot of working people are really struggling to have to pay for child care and or, if they're working, and or taking care of an elder parent or someone with a disability. So what we provide for, we've gone to the economists, they've indicated that we could probably create between 3 and 5 million jobs in two ways. The first thing is to go out and we would make sure that, for example, right now there are 800,000 people waiting to get access to, through Medicaid, access to home health care and or community health care and for elderly people. And the fact is that what we do is we're going to provide money for the states to be able to come up with ideas as to how they would in fact provide for help without having to institutionalize those people. And there's 28 cities in a bunch of states we went into and found out that what we could do is if you send in a nurse, if you send in essentially a carpenter, handyman, and you send in someone who can in fact analyze what's wrong, they found out that if mom has Alzheimer's, you can't cure Alzheimer's, but what you can do is you can prevent her from breaking her hip by making sure they put handrails wherever are needed for mom. You can make sure she's in a position where she's able to deal with the basic needs that she has. And it shows when you do that, when you bring those folks in, it costs about $3,000, but it saves over $30,000. I believe that's the number. And making sure that because it eliminates hospitalization, a whole range of other costs. And the same way with child care. Right now, I believe if we should be able to go on, be able to go on a website that is in your state, find out where the child care facilities are, making sure that no one would have to pay more than 7% of their income for child care, even if it's more than one child, and those who in fact are on the short side of income, they would pay nothing. This would create two things. One, it put an awful lot of people who cannot go to work because they have to stay home with the child. And I was a single parent for 5 years. It's not easy. And to stay home with the child and or someone who is taking care of a parent or a grandparent or someone with special needs and they can't go to work. Secondly, what happens is you'll free up millions of them to be able to go back to work, but also you provide work for an awful lot of home care workers and increase their pay, their ability to, in fact, work, raising the overall economic growth. Economists indicate to me that we'd be in a position where we generate significantly more growth in the GDP, more people will be making more money, paying more taxes, and it would free up over 5 million people, I think it's 5 total, to be able to both people going back to work, and because they can afford the child care, they can afford to care for their parents and those people who are caring for them.
Mr. Vice President, the last time you and I talked in person was March 9th. Since then, you have been doing a lot of virtual campaigning. Yeah. What does this look like going into the last 90 days of this race? Are you going to be able to do in-person campaigning again, or is this going to be the new norm?
Well, I hope we're going to be able to do in-person campaigning, but the way the president is dealing with this virus is making it hard to think we're going to be able to do that. You know, it's incredibly important. Your state, for example, incredibly important state. But as we're seeing with the pandemic, there are unprecedented times, and the first and foremost thing we have to do is provide for the public health. We are not putting the American people at risk. We're about leadership. This is about setting an example and leading the American people, which Donald Trump is completely failing to do. And meanwhile, we're going to continue aggressively to campaign to meet voters where they are in their homes. We have now had over, I'm told, 310 million viewers for online content that have reached millions and millions of interviews that we are viewers because of all the interviews like this one that I'm having. So I think it's going to be the new normal for a while, and it could get a lot worse if the president doesn't step up and start to lead on the virus.
You talked about Michigan being important. We reporters that cover politics look at the electoral map like reading tea leaves, and Michigan is a gateway state, particularly for a Democratic candidate. We're going to run out of time, so I'm going to combine these two questions. How important is Michigan as it plays out in your electoral strategy, and are you still considering Governor Gretchen Whitmer as a potential vice presidential candidate?
Incredibly, and yes.
Would you expand on either of those?
Well, look, Michigan is the key. The proposal I have, as you've talked about in terms of dealing with manufacturing, we're going to create 1 million new manufacturing jobs. When we were in office, we provided 79,000 new jobs, manufacturing jobs, automobile jobs in manufacturing in Michigan. We're going to own the electric vehicle market. We're going to put 550,000 charging stations in the country, all around the country. We're going to make sure that we own the electric vehicle market, and we're going to become a lot of jobs in Michigan. But look, Michigan is a state that is incredibly important, not only in terms of electoral votes, but in what it says. There's an awful lot of people that, like I grew up with in Pennsylvania and in Claymont, Delaware, that in fact are hardworking middle-class folks who deserve a shot. And my case is to the people of Michigan that, in fact, I think if they take a look at what's at stake here in this election, it's been even more clear with this pandemic and national reckoning on race. We can't afford 4 more years of Donald Trump. And so Michigan is critical for me to be able to win.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for your time.
Thank you.